The day before Bill Montgomery got appointed to the Arizona Supreme Court, he was the recipient of a bar complaint. But now that he's a Supreme Court judge, what happens? That's what we're talking about on this episode of Watching the Watchers. The Supreme Court of Arizona has the authority, they have the jurisdiction to discipline lawyers when they're not performing according to the ethical rules, when they're violating some standards, when they're not performing to the requirements of our profession. What happens, though, if a judge is the recipient of a bar complaint? It's a big problem. Ordinarily, if I get in trouble or a prosecutor gets in trouble, things are going to be regulated by the Arizona Supreme Court, which delegates that duty to the State Bar of Arizona to investigate those claims and to prosecute those claims if there is cause for discipline or for a reprimand or whatever it is that the Supreme Court and the State Bar of Arizona believe is appropriate for that particular attorney. But what happens when somebody who was a prosecutor, who ordinarily would have been subject to go through that process, then immediately gets appointed to the Supreme Court? Well, that's what happened in Mr. Montgomery's case. Former Maricopa County Attorney Bill Montgomery got appointed to the Arizona Supreme Court very, very quickly. The day before Governor Ducey made that appointment, Mr. Montgomery came under fire for a complaint that was filed against him in the State Bar of Arizona that would have ordinarily gone through that traditional course. The complaint was, from this article, from Lauren Castle from the Arizona Republic, says that the complaint was about Mr. Montgomery's failure or actual involvement in covering up some misconduct by a prosecutor, Juan Martinez, in the Jodi Arias case. Jodi Arias was the woman who was convicted of murdering her boyfriend, stabbed him many, many times, and shot him in the head in a very gruesome case. Made national news, made national headlines. Interviewed the public defender who represented Miss Arias on my podcast, on the Grueler Nation podcast. But what happened is there was a series of allegations that came against the prosecutor. So Bill Montgomery's prosecutor, a deputy county attorney who was actually prosecuting the case against Jodi Arias. There were claims that Mr. Martinez did a bunch of things that were unethical and outside of the scope of his traditional employment as a county attorney. The allegation against Mr. Montgomery was that Mr. Montgomery failed to supervise Martinez and blocked public records from being released. Those records included personnel records, depositions from employees who said that Mr. Martinez sexually harassed them, according to the complaint. So that goes over to the State Bar of Arizona. Literally, the day after that complaint was filed, Governor Ducey appointed Bill Montgomery to the Supreme Court. Well, how is the Supreme Court, which authorizes the bar to do their investigation, going to investigate, reprimand, and discipline one of their own judges? It's a little bit of a conflict of interest there. So what happened was, by administrative order that came out on September 25th, 2019, the Arizona Supreme Court established what's called an IBC, an independent bar council, to handle those matters. So they're actually going to take that complaint and that investigation away from the state bar that is governed by the Supreme Court. They're going to put it into the hands of an independent bar council. And so this is the order, this is the administrative order that was released on September 25th. And it is saying that this is all going to be assigned to an IBC, an independent bar council, to handle the matters and to properly discharge its obligations. So it's an independent review, an independent council. We'll see where it goes. They're also going to take jurisdiction of the case against Juan Martinez, and they're going to do their investigation, and we're going to follow it along and bring the news to you. It is very curious that literally the day after this complaint was filed, Mr. Montgomery got appointed into the Supreme Court. But we'll see where it goes. We'll see if there's any merit to the complaint. We'll follow it along as we do on everything else here on Watching the Watchers. Until the next video, be sure to hit subscribe so you can follow along. And in the meantime, until the next one, thanks for watching.